Thunder grumbled somewhere over the bay the moment I noticed it. Our guest room lamp was blazing, and two silhouettes, not one, moved behind the curtain. Before we get started, drop a quick comment with your city and your age. It's strange how those two little facts decide just how hard a stranger's story can punch you. My name is Mark Flynn, I'm 41, and for 14 years I've assessed insurance losses for Horizon Mutual, turning smashed fenders and flooded crawl spaces into cold numbers. My wife Amber and I have been married 20 years, raising two teenagers in a palm-lined suburb outside Tampa. Evenings belong to my attic above the garage, where shelves of vinyl lean like old friends. The air up there tastes of lacquer and dust. A ceiling fan ticks tick-tick like a metronome that never finds the beat. Friday, June 7, 10:18 p.m., 81 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity 68%. I was brushing lint from a first pressing of Kind of Blue when Amber texted, running late, quarter-end audit. I tapped back a guitar emoji, right up until I glanced outside. Our blue Toyota Tacoma sat cooling in the driveway. The hood still breathed heat. At that exact moment a rideshare hatchback hissed to a stop. A tall man stepped out, wheeling a graphite suitcase. Amber, still in her pale cardigan, hurried over and hugged him, long enough that friendship wasn't the first word that came to mind. My pulse paused, but training took over. I opened the home security app I'd installed after last summer's burglaries. The porch camera zoomed in, Amber leading the man inside without a backward glance. I froze a frame, shoved it into an encrypted folder called Failsafe, and set the system to back up every 10 minutes. I poured Colombian drip, but the coffee burned less than the thought that my own roof might be the next claim. While the record spun, I started a field log the way I would at a collision scene. 10:18 p.m. Stranger, hug is almost equal to 4S. Guest room occupied. Rideshare plate FL8XU671. Jasmine scent heavier than normal Gulf breeze. Evidence, not drama, that's the rule. Then the first crack widened. My desk phone rang, the caller ID flashing. R. Talbot claims, he said. Mark, sorry this late, but is Amber still here? She walked out at 7 and never uploaded the audit file. I answered. I'll tell her when she gets in. He said. Gets in? She clocked out 3 hours ago. Line dead. One alibi down. I wrote audit file missing on the log, then underlined it twice. Upstairs, a second floorboard creaked. I froze, thinking Amber had returned alone. But it was our daughter Grace, 15, hoodie glowing with Stranger Things letters. She whispered that the Wi-Fi was lagging, then frowned at the extra shoes by the door, Italian leather, size too large for me. I waved her back to bed, lying that a coworker needed data recovered on my office PC. Grace rolled her eyes and shuffled off, but not before glancing once more at the guest room hallway, the way a deer checks the brush when it smells smoke. Across the street, Mrs. Delgado's motion light popped on. Her terrier barked. Retired firefighter, cameras covering half the block. If things blew up, she'd have an angle no lawyer could ignore. The strangest betrayal came 5 minutes later. My phone buzzed with a bank alert. Checking withdrawal. $2,400, Clearwater Beach ATM. Our joint account. Amber's card. I hadn't heard a car leave. Somewhere, someone was spending money faster than the coffee cooled in my cup. The attic felt smaller, the fans tick-tick louder. I opened a new action list. Hire Hank Rivera. Private investigator. Monday breakfast, Waffle House. GPS tag on Amber's car. Pull rideshare data. DNA kits. Grace and Noah. Collect Sunday. Ask Delgado for porch footage. Offer to debug her sprinkler timer. Freeze college savings if more withdrawals hit. The house went quiet again, but the quiet pressed harder than any argument. Each stare groaned like brittle vinyl. Halfway down I nudged a forgotten ticket, Tampa Bay Record Fair, June 15th, and felt the paper tremble in my fingers. Amber's sandalwood soap still floated in the hall, yet now the scent felt imported by that graphite suitcase. I locked the attic door, 2 turns, not one, and killed the light. Lightning flashed, warm air fizzed with static, as if the night itself admitted something was about to short-circuit. The record kept spinning with no needle, whispering empty grooves. How a future sounds when you're no longer certain it still contains music. I didn't know if the family would be rubbled by sunrise, but the stranger's soft laugh beneath the jasmine, and my daughter's puzzled glance, had already dropped the needle on a track none of us had ever heard. By the time that record reached its silent inner circle, I'd discovered there are debts louder than thunder, particularly when the silence that follows might prove my kids were never mine to begin with. Saturday greeted Tampa with a milk-gray sky and air thick enough to drink. I was on the road by 6 a.m., vinyl still ringing in my ears like an unanswered question. Hank Rivera had picked the Waffle House off I-275 because, as he liked to joke, criminals never eat where the coffee is honest. He was already in the back booth, sleeves rolled, spiral notebook open, steam fogging his glasses. He said, "You look like a man who slept next to a fire alarm." I replied, "Didn't sleep. Showed it where the exits are." He said, "Then let's wire the doors before the sparks." I slid the porch camera still across the formica. The restaurant's fluorescent lights turned Amber's hug into a crime scene glow. Rivera whistled through his teeth, jotted the plate number, then produced a black box no larger than a matchbook. He said, "Military-grade tracker. Battery 6 months. Pop it behind the rear bumper, south corner so the spare tire shields the signal." I replied, "Today at noon, she's got a spa appointment. I'll have 10 minutes alone with the truck." He said, "Good. Tonight at 9 I'll text you a map. If she lies, the dots won't." Coffee refills kept coming, but something stronger brewed in my gut. While Rivera sketched angles of surveillance, my phone buzzed with a push alert. Grace's debit card declined, insufficient funds. I frowned. The college savings was supposed to buffer every allowance. I logged in. Our joint account read $38.14. A second withdrawal, $3,000 this time, from a liquor store ATM in Clearwater. Rivera noticed the blood drain from my face. He said, "Funds bleeding?" I replied, "Artery, not paper cut." He said, "Freeze everything now. People in denial wait until the bone shows." I transferred the remaining balance to a locked custodial account under my mother's maiden name, then set up fraud alerts on both kids' cards. By the time the waitress dropped the bill, I had placed financial sandbags around every dollar Amber couldn't explain. Back home the house felt like a stage set after the audience has gone, the props familiar, the silence wrong. Noah was still asleep, game controller dangling from his hand. Grace perched at the breakfast bar, hoodie swapped for marching band t-shirt, eyes red from a night of half-answers. She said, "Mom called at 2. She whispered. Sounded like waves in the background. I replied, "She's on a deadline, honey. Sometimes offices borrow ocean white noise to keep the staff awake." She said, "Why was she crying?" I had no script for that. I kissed the top of her head and promised blueberry pancakes. While the batter rose, I slipped outside. The Tacoma's undercarriage smelled of warm rubber. 10 seconds with a magnet, and Rivera's tracker clicked into place. I wiped my fingerprints with a shop rag, the same way I'd taught Noah to wipe grease after changing the oil. Inside, Grace scrolled her phone. She said, "Dad, check this." A new photo on Amber's social feed, a sunrise shot of Clearwater Beach, captioned "Audit break" with a winking emoji. The timestamp overlapped the ATM withdrawal. The stranger from last night stood half-cropped at the edge of the frame, hand on her lower back, like he owned a piece of her spine. By afternoon the sky cracked and released the rain so hard the gutters frothed. I couldn't sit still. I alphabetized the Miles Davis section, then realphabetized by recording label. 6 o'clock brought a call from Mrs. Delgado. She said, "Sweetheart, my terrier's collar camera caught your porch last night. Want the file?" I thanked her, promised to fix her sprinkler timer tomorrow. When the video arrived, the resolution shocked me. The stranger's face was clear enough to read the worry lines above his expensive smile. Grace peeked over my shoulder. She said, "Dad, that's Mr. Brooks. He came to our school career day. I replied. He said he flips office buildings in Miami, right? She said. And donated the 3D printer to the robotics club. I nodded, lips pressed so tight they hurt. A man who invests in children with one hand and robs them of a father with the other. There's your market definition of moral arbitrage. At 8:56 p.m. Rivera's text blinked, tracker live. Truck parked 1100 Pierce Avenue, same address as rideshare tag. Looks like a short-term rental. He attached a GPS map, a tidy red line from our suburb to a waterfront gated community, then a smaller blue circle labeled Boathouse ID 7. I pushed open the attic window. Night air smelled of wet asphalt and distant charcoal grills. Somewhere across town Amber was clinking glasses with a man who knew how to ruin audits and teenagers in one swoop. I played blue and green at half speed, the trumpet so mournful it felt like breathing underwater. Noah appeared, rubbing his eyes. He said, "Dad, Mom's still not back?" I replied, "Working late. Big deadline." He said, "Grace said you're mad? Are you two getting divorced like the Wilkins?" I swallowed the bile. I replied, "Not tonight. Go plug your phone, storm's rolling in." He trudged off, but I caught the tremor in his shoulders, fear disguised as exhaustion. The storm broke at midnight, thunder chasing its own tail above the bay. Lightning flashed, and the attic filled with a strobe of vinyl shadows. I logged every ping Rivera's tracker sent, 12:14, 12:27, 12:45. The truck never moved. At 1 a.m., Amber finally called. I let it ring twice, then answered. She said, "Laptop died. I'm staying with Beth from HR so I can finish the spreadsheet." I replied, "Is Beth the one who lives on a boat?" She paused 3 beats too long. She said, "What?" "No, she's in West Shore." I replied, "Funny. I'm staring at the Tacoma. Thought you took it." She said nothing, but her breathing filled the line like someone pumping bellows. I replied, "Bring home the audit, Amber, and the missing $2,000, and we'll pretend we're still insured." She said, "Mark, you're scaring me." I replied, "Good. Because the deductible on betrayal is always paid in fear." I hung up. 10 seconds later the tracker blinked green. The Tacoma started southbound. South meant bridges. Bridges meant nowhere to hide until the other shore. I stared at the rain-lashed window, each drop a blurred bar on an invisible cage. Beneath my feet the turntable reached the record's silent inner groove and spun there, needle popping in a lonely loop. Amber's next stop would prove 3 things at once: who she trusted, how far she'd run, and whether blood ties could drown in salt water as easily as truth drowns in lies. Sunday dawned like a wet towel slapped across the bay. Clouds sagged so low I could have written notes on their bellies. I brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, then plucked 2 strands of hair from Grace's pillow while she still snored. Noah's came easier. He kept a brush on his nightstand. Both samples slid into the anonymous FedEx envelope. Next day air would start the 48-hour countdown no lab could rush or slow. Mrs. Delgado waved from her porch. She said, "Sprinkler timer's yours if you still want that video." I replied, "Timer first, video second." She said, "Bring a flathead and an alibi." Her wink meant she'd pieced together more than I'd shared. Retired firefighters spot smoke even when it tastes like jasmine. At 10:14 a.m., the tracker pinged. Amber's Tacoma was still at 1100 Pierce Avenue, but the dot wobbled 20 yards east, as if she'd rolled closer to the seawall. Rivera texted a single word, "Boathouse." I told the kids I needed screws for the attic shelves and drove toward Clearwater. Rain smeared the windshield, turning palm trunks into gray prison bars. Pierce Avenue ended at an iron gate. Beyond it, wooden walkways formed a squared-off maze, each slip hiding a cabin perched on pilings. I killed the engine and walked. My footfalls thudded in the hush between thunderclaps. Slip 7 smelled of cedar and sunscreen. Through half-drawn blinds I caught a glimpse of Amber's cardigan tossed over a chair and, worse, Grace's marching band hoodie draped across the same chair back. Borrowed or stolen, the fabric looked limp, like a flag flown upside down. A voice drifted out, way too familiar. "Carter Brooks," he said. "She'll never see the withdrawal, trust me. The kid's debit buffer hides transfers under 55. Amber's reply was muffled. Maybe she'd learned to keep secrets under 70 decibels. I stepped closer, phone in record mode. Another voice, male, deeper, one I hadn't heard. "Then Monday you file, Tuesday we spin the valuation shortfall, Wednesday you're free." 3 people in that cabin, counting down a calendar that erased me in less than a week. I backed away, heel crunching a shell. Silence inside. Footsteps. The door handle rattled. I ducked behind a stack of paddleboards as Amber peered out, hair wind-snarled, eyes sharp. She scanned the dock, lingered on the paddleboards, then retreated. I exhaled, tasting metal. "Rivera called," he said. "Tracker shows movement?" I replied. "No, but the situation does," he said. "I'm parked 2 slips over. Think you'll need an extraction or an archive?" I answered. "Archive first. Extraction later, when it hurts more." We waited until the 3 conspirators opened the door together. Carter led, his expensive smile flashing. Behind him strode a man built like a country club quarterback. Later I'd learn his name, Mason Trent, Amber's college ex, now a boutique investment advisor specializing in post-marital liquidity. Amber followed, clutching her laptop and my daughter's hoodie. They loaded into Carter's Audi. The tracker in the Tacoma stayed put, a hollow decoy. Rivera snapped photos through a telephoto lens while I memorized the license plates. Back home, Grace was mid-argument with her best friend on video chat. She said, "Mom promised she'd help finish the prom committee budget, then she ghosted." The word ghosted stabbed harder than I'd expected. Noah sat at the table, calculator open, sketching axle ratios for a robotics club prototype, his mother's tuition fund now evaporating by the hour. I opened Amber's laptop, the one she'd forgotten to password lock since upgrading the OS. Within 5 minutes I found a spreadsheet named Beth Audit Real Estate. No Beth existed in her contacts. The sheet logged wire transfers from a corporate account called Seabright Capital Consulting, $2,400, $3,000, $4,750. Each entry flagged marketing reimbursement, asset reposition. Asset reposition, in insurance slang, means somebody lied about value and wants a payout before the roof caves in. The downstairs clock chimed 4. Rain quit without apology, leaving the yard steaming. I grabbed the kids and drove to Mrs. Delgado's. She served lemonade, pretended not to stare at the worry trench between my eyebrows. The sprinkler timer took 8 minutes to fix. The SD card from her terrier's collar camera took 2 seconds to pocket. She said, "You look how we used to look after pulling kids from house fires, determined and already haunted." I replied, "I've pulled kids from smoke, Mrs. D. Just never my own." She said, "Then keep your lungs clear and your exits marked." Evening bled into a sunset the color of old wine, pretty to strangers, sour to anyone who knew the vintage. Grace reheated leftover pasta, Noah zoned out to synth rock. I pretended to grade claims from work, but each line blurred into Amber's phantom withdrawals. At 9:06 p.m. the house phone rang. Unknown caller. I let the machine grab it. He said, "Mark Flynn, you're making loud choices. Choices have costs. Stop following the truck." The voice was Mason Trent's. I recognized the collegiate arrogance. A faint echo suggested speakerphone, maybe Carter and Amber listening. The message cut off before he could name the price. Fear? Money? Custody? I rewound the tape 4 times, searching for a clue in background noise. Something rhythmic, mechanical, like halyards tapping a mast. They were still on the water. Rivera texted a low-light photo, Amber kissing Mason on Carter's rented deck, Clearwater skyline twinkling behind them. Under it he typed, "Tomorrow they sail 0700, charter confirmation in email they forgot to erase." Then a second line, "I can spike the fuel line or let you plant your own storm." The house creaked as if it understood Spanish moss secrets. I looked at Grace's hoodie on the back of a chair, same chair I'd seen through the cabin blinds. My daughter's scent absorbing the sweat of a stranger. I opened the FedEx tracking site, en route to lab. Estimated arrival Monday 9:30 a.m. 41 hours. I queued up Miles Davis, but the trumpet refused to soothe. I lowered the needle anyway, letting the hiss mask the sound of my own breathing. By midnight I drafted a new list on the yellow legal pad. Alert Bank Fraud Division about Seabright Capital. Contact Maritime Patrol, anonymous tip about unregistered charters. Pick up Delgado's SD card copy at 6 a.m. Keep kids out of school Monday. Alibi, plumbing emergency. Call Rivera, Plan B if DNA comes back 0. Rain returned soft as spilled secrets. The window pane quivered with each drop, an unwritten Morse code. Grace knocked, bleary-eyed. She said, "Dad, I dreamed we were on a boat, and you fell overboard. I couldn't pull you up." I replied, "Then I'd learn to breathe underwater, kiddo. Go back to sleep." She shuffled away, but her words clung like wet sails. Amber thinks the ocean will swallow her footprints, but tides have a habit of washing wreckage to shore, and I've already marked where the bodies will float. Monday arrived like a hell breath no one dared release. I woke the kids at 6 with the excuse that the upstairs toilet had sprung a leak and we needed a plumber. Funny how easily a lie comes when you know a bigger one is rotting the floorboards. Grace curled on the couch with her algebra notes. Noah dismantled the family router, claiming it helped him think. Keeping them inside felt like chaining butterflies, but the safest cages are the ones confusion builds. By 6:15 a.m. I was on the driveway, phone to ear. I said, "Hillsborough Marina Patrol? I'm a concerned neighbor. Looks like a charter running cash under the radar. Slip 7, Clearwater Yacht Basin. Gray hull catamaran, no visible name." The officer thanked me, typing keys loud enough to serve as confession. 2 minutes later I heard Amber's Tacoma growl past the house. She didn't slow, didn't glance at the windows. Tracker dot blinked south down the causeway, destined for water. I texted Rivera, "Catamaran sails 0700. Patrol alerted. Watch and record." His reply came back, "Understood. Storm moving in from Gulf, perfect cover." I poured coffee, stared at the FedEx site. On vehicle for delivery. Estimated 9:34 a.m. Every refresh felt like tapping a bruise. At 8:02 Mrs. Delgado dropped a manila envelope through the mail slot. Her terrier's footage plus a note, "Sprinklers never worked better. Now fix your house." She underlined your. It looked like a firefighter's way of saying contained spread before ignition. Grace patted in, hoodie sleeves chewed at the cuffs. She said, "Why is Mom's location turned off?" I replied, "Maybe the office blocks Wi-Fi." She said, "But her Instagram just posted a sailboat emoji." I swallowed the lie like dry sand. I replied, "She'll bring souvenirs of salt and apologies." 8:30. Thunderheads muscled over the Gulf, sky turned gunmetal. I drove the kids to my mother's condo 3 blocks inland, blaming a burst pipe. Mom read the worry in my voice, ushered them into breakfast and silent cartoons. I left before questions could bloom. On US 19 the rain began sideways, hammering the windshield. Rivera's call cut through static. He said, "Charter crew spooked. Patrol dinghies circling." Brooks kept the engines off, pretending engine failure. Amber and Trent arguing on deck, could hear her say audit ruined. "Shot full video." I replied, "Copy. Follow them once patrol leaves." He said, "You sure you want exposure this early?" "Without proof." I interrupted. "Proof arrives in 1 hour." I pulled into a strip mall lot beside a pawnshop and opened Amber's laptop again. Deep in the downloads folder hid a PDF, draft petition, dissolution and emergency asset freeze. Mason Trent's e-signature hovered, blank next to Amber's. Timeline box's red file, Wednesday 10:15 a.m. That meant 2 days from now they'd staple my name to a judge's docket while I was still searching the attic for bandages. Another email popped, a reservation confirmation for Expression Spa, Key West, check-in Friday, 2 adults, 1 deluxe ocean view. So Clearwater was only the rehearsal. The real show aimed south, beyond jurisdiction lines where charitable Florida judges rarely tread. My phone buzzed. FedEx, package delivered, front porch. Heart skipped like a scratched record. I raced home, thunder rolling overhead like barrels down a staircase. The envelope waited under the eave, rain beating on its brown paper. I sliced it open with a house key. Inside, 2 sealed reports. I tore mine first. Probability of paternity 0%, subject Noah Flynn. Ink seemed to burn into my retina. Second envelope, probability of paternity 0%, subject Grace Flynn. The storm outside snapped a branch. I barely flinched. I scanned the pages into a fresh folder titled Final Claim and fired copies to 2 places: Rivera's secure Dropbox and an address labeled L. Marshall at HXO.gov. Assistant State Attorney Lena Marshall, the same prosecutor who once commended my testimony on a staged arson case. Subject line: urgent, paternity fraud and financial crimes evidence. Body: more to follow before nightfall. Hold warrants until 18 hours for complete set. Proof delivered. I loaded Amber's laptop, the SD card, my porch cam stills, bank logs, and the DNA PDFs onto a thumb drive the size of a thumbnail. Pocketed it like a talisman. Rivera rang again, voice pitched against the wind. He said, "Patrol released them, writing up minor registration fine. Catamaran heading inland channel, likely hiding at Fisherman's Cove." I replied, "Coordinates?" He said, "Dropping pin now." Blue dot flashed on my screen, just 5 miles west. Fuel gauge quarter full, heart over revving. I told Rivera to keep distance. He said he'd park under the Causeway Bridge with the telephoto, engine idling. On the drive, wipers fought sheets of water. Each flash of lightning froze palms in skeletal poses. My father's old Colt 1911 lay in the glove box, unloaded, safety on, hope I never touch it. But sometimes ballast keeps a boat upright. The catamaran came into view, gray hull bouncing in chop, canvas flapping. Carter on deck yelling into a phone, Trent hunched at the helm. Amber below, hair plastered to her cheeks as she hauled a duffel topside. I parked beside Rivera's SUV. He handed me binoculars. He said, "They're packing. 10 minutes and they'll gun it for the Gulf. Storm gives cover." I replied, "Not if the Coast Guard thinks they're moving narcotics." He said, "That rumor would spread faster than lightning." I dialed the anonymous tip line again, this time a gravel voice. "Suspicious vessel, Fisherman's Cove, loading unmarked duffels, 3 suspects, heading offshore." Dispatcher took GPS, thank me, disconnected. Sirens wailed distant. Brooks barked orders, Amber through the duffel below deck. Trent revved engines. The boat lurched forward, nose slapping waves. Coast Guard cutter rounded the point, lights spinning red, white, blue against the iron sky. Carter cranked starboard. A wave slammed, spraying sheets of water. Amber slipped, vanished behind railings. Rivera's camera rattled rapid-fire shots like hail on metal. He said, "You want to be seen?" I replied, "Only by one of them." I stepped into the rain, vinyl sleeve of kind of blue tucked under my arm. Held it high like a beacon. The catamaran cut across the chop. Amber surfaced at the rail, eyes locking on the album cover, a private signal she'd never mistake. Her face collapsed in recognition, then fear. She yelled something lost in wind. Carter jerked the wheel. The boat pitched. Coast Guard siren shrieked closer. Trent throttled down too late. Cutter surged alongside, officers shouting commands. Amber's scream tore across water, ripped short when Carter dragged her below deck. Crew on the cutter drew sidearms. I lowered the record, rain pocking its cellophane. Rivera muttered a prayer in Spanish that ended on my name. I wasn't listening. My gaze stayed on the churning water where rail met storm, waiting for one more flash of lightning, a flash bright enough to show whether the cost of truth would be a boarding or a body. If the sea swallowed them now, evidence could still convict. But who would explain to Grace why her hoodie washed ashore with a bullet hole the size of doubt? Rain-bright combers flashed with inner lightning as the gray catamaran bobbed under armed escort. 3 Coast Guard officers shouted for engine shutdown. Brooks stiffened against the mast while Trent ducked toward the hatch. Amber surfaced long enough to spot me on the pier, vinyl sleeve tucked beneath my jacket. Her face folded, and her fingers spelled the old family signal, stop. I did not step closer. Inside the Clearwater substation, everything smelled of wet plywood and overheating fluorescent tubes. Officer Lang dropped a hard drive onto the table, 6 hours of wholescam footage. Assistant State Attorney Lena Marshall snapped on latex gloves with a surgeon's certainty. She said, "Federal auditors confirmed the siphoned funds top $250,000. That bumps us to interstate fraud." I replied. "An attempted parental abduction once they cleared the breakwater." She said, "That sells better to a jury than spreadsheets." My flash drive, DNA reports, porch video, Mrs. Delgado's terrier cam, the bank logs, lay between us like an unlit fuse. At 2:40 p.m. 2 U.S. Marshals hauled Brooks and Trent to holding. Amber stayed behind, blood pressure spiking. They wrapped her in a foil blanket that rustled louder than her nerves. She said, "Mark, the kids, please." I replied, "The kids already paid, 2% of DNA each." She said, "Mason promised a scholarship fund, $300,000 apiece." I replied, "You sold their bloodline for discount tuition. Register's close, the cashier wants cash." Lena slid a remand order in front of Amber, 72 hours, no bail. For the protection of minor witnesses. When the door clicked behind her, the air felt 3 degrees warmer. By 6 I was home. Water on the shingles still hissed like a low-grade fire. Grace pressed her forehead to my chest. Noah hung back, eyes flinty. He said, "You knew we might not be yours?" I replied, "I knew love isn't measured by a cotton swab." He said, "If the court calls her stranger, do I still get to visit?" I replied, "Court labels what we were, we choose what we stay." Words dried out, only the weather spoke. Sirens streaked the night, someone nabbing a stalled skiff with 2 lost passengers. Probably Brooks and Trent testing freedom. In the attic I stepped over stacks of vinyl until I found the Japanese pressing of Ascenseur pour Elekafod. Elevator to the gallows. Fitting soundtrack. My phone lit, Amber's attorney. Amicable settlement, immediate divorce, 40% assets, joint custody if you drop criminal charges. I screenshotted and forwarded it to Lena with a single line, offer equals admission. 11 p.m. Another ping from Rivera's tracker. The Tacoma was moving east on the interstate. Impossible. Its keys sat in the evidence locker. Someone had unscrewed the beacon and hitched it to a tow rig. Diversion or test? Rivera called. He said, "Tags on a junk hauler. Want me to plant a mini RF unit straight into the OBD port?" I replied, "Yes. And hide a trail cam in the garage. They'll come for whatever evidence they forgot." He said, "Or whoever." I replied, "Let them. I want every guilty hand under the same coffin lid." Midnight. Ascenseur moaned through the attic. Text from an unknown number, Trent's burner. "Don't sleep." A second message, "If the kids learn you're not family, who wears the blame?" I thumbed one reply, "Bad investments worry about blame, smart ones plan dividends." Then I powered off the phone. Storm runoff gurgled in the gutters. The house smelled of damp plywood and detergent, a fragile piece. I drifted downstairs, but the front porch motion light clicked on. A silhouette lingered just beyond the glass, too short for Brooks, too broad for Amber. I reached for the unloaded Colt in the hall drawer, thumb on cold steel. The silhouette bent, tucked an envelope between the rails, and disappeared into rain. Inside the envelope, a single Polaroid of Grace's blue hoodie, bullet hole through the breast logo, fabric soaked dark. On the back, felt tip ink, tick-tock. No signature. No need. I locked every latch, set Rivera's spare tracker under Noah's mattress just in case, and sank onto the couch where the vinyl crackle still lived in my ears. By dawn Tuesday we would stand before a family court judge who'd grant Amber 20 minutes of final statement. If she confessed, 3 agencies would detonate at once. If she lied, my children's last illusions would shatter on live record. Either her words will end in handcuffs, or in the kind of silence that buries every witness but still leaves room for a father's revenge. Dawn crawled in on Tuesday, gray and suffocating. I'd been awake since the Polaroid, the image of Grace's hoodie pinned to my thoughts like a specimen. Court began at 9. Amber would get her 20-minute statement, and a judge would weigh temporary custody. I brewed coffee, doubled the grounds. Grace patted in first, eyes swollen. She said, "Why is my hoodie on the dining table?" "It smells like bleach," I replied. "Found it in the garage. Probably damp." She traced the fabric, fingertips pausing on the tiny stitched hole I'd sewn over the bullet tear at 3 a.m. She didn't ask why the logo felt stiff. Noah shuffled in next, laptop tucked under his arm. He said, "Router log shows someone piggybacked the Wi-Fi at 217. Same MAC address that spoofed the Tacoma tag." I replied. "Can you block it?" He said. "Done. But whoever it is knows our network as well as Mom's password patterns." Grace flinched at the word Mom. By 8:15 we were downtown, rain threatening but holding back. Rivera waited near the courthouse fountain, camera bag slung low. He said, "Marshal convoy brings Brooks and Trent in separate vans, 6-man detail. Amber rides county transport." I nodded, eyes on the building's limestone facade. It looked like stone pretending it hadn't absorbed other people's screams. Inside, the hallway was a tunnel of murmurs. Amber's attorney, Ms. Devereux, ushered her client toward conference room B. Amber wore county khaki and fresh lipstick, the contrast jarring. She spotted the kids and reached out. She said, "Grace, baby, Dad's confused. Let's talk." Grace stepped behind me. Noah's jaw clenched. He said, "You sold our future for a boat ride." Amber's cheeks blanched. She said, "It wasn't like that." I replied, "Tell it to the judge. He's renting the next 20 minutes. A deputy guided her away. The hallway exhaled relief. We sat in the small courtroom, wood paneling polished to an almost moral shine. Judge O'Brien, glasses on the tip of his nose, opened with docket formalities. Lena Marshall outlined paternity fraud, financial crimes, attempted flight. Devereux requested, "A moment for maternal context." Amber stood, palms flat on the lectern. She said, "Your Honor, my husband's obsession with control created an unsafe environment. I sought financial independence." I felt Grace stiffen beside me. She continued, "The DNA tests were coerced. My children deserve to choose whose roof feels loving." I replied to the bench, "Your Honor, coercion doesn't print lab reports." O'Brien raised a hand. "Enough for now." He scheduled the custody trial for Friday and remanded Amber to county lockup without bail, citing risk of witness tampering. The gavel echoed, but what really hurt was the silence that followed, Grace's drawn breath, Noah's stare welded to the floor. Outside, clouds finally cut loose. Rain drummed the courthouse steps like a second verdict no one had asked for. We reached the parking deck. The sedan windshield held a new envelope under the wiper, twin to last night's. Inside, a thumb drive and a note in block print, "Play me before midnight, or the kids go viral." Password scribbled beneath, pendulum. Noah slid the drive into his laptop before I could object. A video loaded, Trent sitting in a dim motel room, pistol on the table. He said, "Mark, you called lightning. Storm's bigger than you guessed. Amber cuts a deal tomorrow. She names you violent, unstable, cites gun ownership. CPS pulls the kids. Frankly, I'd rather keep them out of foster care. Transfer everything in the Horizon 401k to account ending 6281, and we vanish. Ignore this, and at 0:01 a.m., every contact Grace texted last year gets a link to a live stream, hostage edition." He smiled like a man pitching timeshares. Grace choked. She said, "Why does he have my phone backup?" I replied, "Because your mother handed him every password she ever learned." Rivera leaned over my shoulder. He said, "Metadata puts the motel 3 miles north, Bayview Motor Lodge, room faces lot. Bad lighting means cheap curtains. I answered. Kids to safe house, then we visit the lodge. He said. You sure? One wrong step and the stream goes live. I replied. That's why the step must be silent. At 4 p.m., the kids were with my mother, house alarm armed, trail cam live in the garage. Rivera and I drove to Bayview in his SUV, rain now a curtain of steel beads. I left the Colt locked in the glove box, still unloaded, cold metal was ballast enough. We parked behind a delivery van. Rivera assembled a parabolic mic aimed at room 214. Static, hotel TV, then Trent's voice. He said, Amber, your statement flopped. Judge didn't bite. Plan B, lean on CPS angle. She replied, her tone brittle. Mark will never fold. He keeps records the way hoarders keep cats. He laughed. Everyone folds. Some on paper, some in grief. Police scanner chirped. A call about shots fired at Clearwater Pier. Diversion? At 5:37, Trent exited, raincoat hood up, duffel in hand. Carter Brooks followed, limping, ankle bracelet glowed beneath cuff. They piled into a white rental SUV. Rivera said, They won't risk the kids here. Probably stashed evidence instead, maybe the live stream trigger. I replied. Or the gun from the hostage clip. He said, We tag them or we search the room? I answered, Room first. Kids aren't in the SUV. Door 214 was wedged with a folded matchbook. They'd counted on rain to keep voyeurs away. Inside smelled of gun oil and cheap bleach. Laptop open on the bed ran a countdown, 7:23:49. File labeled Grace _hostage feed. MP4 queued in broadcasting software. I copied the entire drive, then killed the hotel Wi-Fi router at the wall jack. Countdown froze, buffer spun. Rivera flicked open the nightstand Bible, found a burner phone taped inside, SIM removed. He said, Failsafe call. I replied, Trace? He answered, Dead without SIM. We planted Rivera's micro-tracker under the bed frame where housekeeping wouldn't look, then slipped out, locking the door behind. Rain intensified, thunder rattling neon signage. The motel name flickered from Bayview to B_Vi. Phone buzzed, Lena Marshall. She said, I've got a judge ready for emergency protective order if you deliver a location. I replied, Give me 1 more hour. I need them all in one frame. She said, Clock's brutal. Don't let the wrong story print first. Back in the SUV, Rivera refreshed his GPS feed. The white rental headed toward an industrial marina, Pier 9, the one with abandoned warehouses. I thought of the Polaroid, the bullet hole, the word TikTok. Trent didn't trust tides any more than courtrooms. He liked stage lights and cameras. We tailed at 3 car lengths, wipers thrashing. Night settled early, storm clouds stealing color from everything. The rental slowed at a corrugated metal warehouse, bay door half open. Headlights clicked off. Brooks and Trent disappeared inside. I dialed Grace to hear her voice. Instead I heard a soft beep, call blocked. Trent had already flipped the parental controls he'd stolen. Rivera passed me the unloaded Colt, gripped cold even through leather gloves. He said, Still ballast? I replied, Until gravity changes. Sirens wailed 2 miles south, maybe our earlier scanner report blooming into something bigger. I checked the motel countdown on my phone clone, 6:58:02. Less than 7 hours until midnight. If that timer hits 0, the whole world hears my children beg for a truth they never asked to learn, so tonight either I cut the wire clean, or Trent's bullet hole becomes more than a prophecy. The rain had boiled into steam by the time Rivera and I eased the SUV behind a stack of abandoned shipping containers. From here we could see into the corrugated warehouse. Sodium lamps flickered over rows of retired shrimp boats on trailers, their hulls chalked with auction numbers. A single floodlight cut a stage-like circle in the center bay. Within it stood Trent's laptop, a portable hotspot, 2 tripods, and a hard plastic crate the size of a coffin. He said, Rental GPS pings every 2 minutes. Deputies will need 15 to snake through the port gate. I replied. We need 10. I left the unloaded Colt in the glove box. Cold steel had done its work. Tonight facts would be the bullets. Around my neck hung a body cam, streaming live to Lena Marshall's encrypted server. If I fell, the tape would keep talking. We ghosted the side door. Inside smelled of diesel, rain rot, and stale ambition. Brooks paced, ankle monitor sparking red in the half-light. Trent crouched over the crate, screwing an external battery to a pistol grip camera. Amber typed at the laptop, face lit funeral blue by the screen. She said, "The hotspot keeps dropping." Trent hissed. "Then tether your phone. We start at 11:50. Fear sells better when clocks tremble." Brooks checked his watch, limping. He said, "Kids still at grandma's. Signal shows house alarm armed. We need leverage." I stepped from the shadows. I said, "Leverage is my specialty." You three over-leveraged one lie and crashed the fund. All heads snapped. Trent's hand darted to the crate, but I raised a flash drive. I said, "This is your live stream, unedited. Hotel countdown, the pistol, your confession about paternity fraud, plus 2 prior offers to extort. Already with the state attorney." Amber's voice cracked. She said, "Mark, don't." I replied, "Tell them which version hurts less." Brooks charged first, but Rivera swung a boat hook like a conductor's baton, tripping him into a puddle of bilge water. The tripod toppled, the hotspot skittered away. Trent ripped open the crate, only to find it empty. I'd moved Grace's hoodie hours ago, leaving a note inside, "Debt collected." He said, "You think evidence keeps you safe?" "I still have words," I replied. "Words stream both ways." I tapped the body cam. Lena's voice barked through its tiny speaker. "This is ASA Marshall. Officers en route. Step away from the victim and place hands visible." The warehouse walls carried her command like cathedral echo. Brooks reached for Trent's pistol, found the magazine well empty. Rivera had pocketed the rounds at the motel. Amber sagged against the laptop, mascara bleeding. She said, "Mason, stop. It's over. They have everything." He snarled, "Not the 401k. Transfer now or the feed goes manual." I answered, "Feed already went manual, Mason. Your hotspot's broadcasting, straight to Marshall's office." Blue strobes strobed through the roof panels. Sheriff cruisers screeched outside, footfalls thundered on metal decking. Deputies swarmed in, weapons drawn. Plastic ties cinched wrists. Miranda rights rustled the air like paper birds. A deputy guided Amber past me. She whispered, "I loved them." I replied, "You loved the idea of them. The real thing weighed more than your balance sheet." Trent stared as officers photographed the scene. He said, "You'll poison them against her. They'll resent you." I replied, "Resentment is cheaper than lies. And it matures slower." Friday, 3 months later, the courthouse smelled of fresh varnish instead of rain. Judge O'Brien read sentences with surgical calm. Brooks, 7 years for wire fraud and attempted extortion. Trent, 10, with parole no sooner than 6. Amber, 10 for paternity fraud, money laundering, plus restitution of every stolen cent. She never looked back as deputies led her out. Outside, sun broke clean over Indian Rocks Beach. Grace clutched her camera. She's shooting yearbook now. Noah balanced a box of robotics parts for college orientation. Rivera leaned against the Tacoma, tracker removed, engine humming like forgiveness. He said, "Storm's gone. Shore looks wider." I replied, "Storm taught us how to read the tides." Grace snapped a photo of the 3 of us. Vinyl sleeve of kind of blue peeked from my tote, a scratch across the cellophane that reminded me even masterpieces crack and still play true. We drove home with windows down, Gulf air smelling of salt and second chances. The attic awaited, fan ticking in its steady half-beat while the turntable warmed. I dropped the needle, trumpet hissed, soft and certain. Subscribe if you want more stories about real men who don't scream. They act. Coldly? To the end?